You've been taken to the cleaners by a landlord, a travel agent, a garage. You're frustrated, you're angry, you're fed up. What are you going to do to get justice? Why, you're going to go to court.
This is Talene Vartanian. She's been to small claims court more times than almost anyone, except maybe a small claims court judge. She is Ms. Small Claims Court. Talene has been to court
4 times.
Talene strongly believes that
Small Claims Court is a perfect place for consumers to seek justice.
Talene has been to court over a landlord-tenant dispute and won. She's been to court twice for tropical vacation ripoffs and won. Here's a story about another case Talene went to court over and won.
A few years ago, I bought a used car, and I was thrilled with the car, but the radio was a pain. There was static, there was whistling noises. It was really irritating.
Talene took the radio to the shop where it was bought. They told her that they'd fix it. Talene said,
"Okay."
Time passed. Talene made repeated phone calls to the shop. No one called her back. Finally, they told her they couldn't repair it. But they'd replace the stereo with a better one. Talene said,
"Fine."
But there were problems. So, Talene wrote a letter to the shop.
I am a busy person, sir. I do not have time to return repeatedly to your store until you get this right. But believe me, I will be a thorn in your side until you do.
But still, no word. Talene was feeling very
ripped off.
So, Talene took the radio to a different shop. They said that the new radio had been improperly wired. They reinstalled it. And Talene sent the bill of $71.30 to the original shop. But still, no response. Finally, she wrote another letter and said if she didn't hear by the end of the month,
I'll see you in court. My favorite words.
Certainly, Talene did everything that any consumer should do.
Judge Marvin Zucker literally wrote the book on small claims court.
She appreciated the fact that the court system was to be the last resort, and I think she did absolutely the correct thing.
But don't expect instant results.
It could take several months, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, but eventually people will have their day in court.
That day got closer for Talene when, after hearing nothing from the shop owner, she paid $35 and filed in small claims court.
For access to the judicial system, I consider that to be quite a bargain.
A bargain as long as you know what you're doing.
When you decide you are going to sue, make sure as much as possible that in fact you're suing the right person. Don't get hung up on the name of the company. Go to the Ministry of Consumer and Commercial Relations. They will help you.
That's important because mistakes will delay the process. But Talene knew exactly whom and what she was after.
You know, man could have kissed me off for $71.30 and it would have been all over. But no, because he didn't do that, I decided to sue for a lot more.
In addition to the $71.30 for the radio repair, Talene calculated, among other things, out-of-pocket court expenses and $375 for the value of her own time, and something else.
Punitive damages, meaning I wanted to send a message to this guy, this is not a way to deal with people. And the punishment for that, I figured, should be $250. And that came to a grand total of $723.10, and that's what I filed my claim for.
Awards for going to court vary from province to province. In BC, the maximum is $10,000. In Ontario, it's only $6,000.
Well, my day in court finally arrived, and boy, was I thrilled.
Talene, like most people who sue in small claims court, did so without legal representation.
When you represent yourself, the judge can be very helpful and will guide you along the way.
In many ways, of course, the judge is a consumer himself or herself. You shouldn't feel intimidated by the process.
And the added advantage is that you don't have to pay the big bucks for the fancy schmancy lawyers.
In representing herself, Talene did something critical.
Remember to bring all your documents.
Documentation, documentation, documentation. Bring your materials with you. Bring the contracts with you. Don't forget your witnesses. There is this misconception that if a witness happens to be a family member, they can't give evidence on your behalf, and that is not true. But come prepared.
Not only was I totally prepared with my documents, but the defendant didn't even turn up. Boy, was that a big mistake on his part.
A mistake that contributed to Talene winning her case. She was awarded $323.10. She lost out on some things like the costs for her own time, but she did win on something else.
I was told that punitive damages aren't normally awarded in small claims court.
Highly unusual.
But when the judge put me on the stand, I was very deferential.
Always an excellent idea.
He decided, after hearing the horror of what I'd been through, to award them.
Certainly in my experience, when the litigant refers to myself, to the judge, as Your Majesty, I think that goes a long way to support that particular person's claim. I'm only joking, of course.
But Talene still didn't have her money.
Perhaps the biggest misconception in small claims court is when you get a judgment, when the judge awards you a sum of money, that you actually see the money that split second, and of course that's not the case. You will find that to collect on a judgment will require quite often enforcement proceedings.
That means you may arrange to have wages garnished or have land or personal property seized to pay the judgment. Now in the end, you might be thinking, gee, wasn't that a whole lot of work for Talene for just $323.10?
For a lot of people, small claims court is not about collecting money. It's not about a judgment. It's not about interest. It's about principle.
In the end, the great thing about small claims court is that it's a wonderful place to seek justice when you've been wronged in the marketplace and to do it at a bargain basement price. Hey, they don't call it the People's Court for nothing.